This episode is brought to you by Chalk Cartel. I've been using this chalk for more than a year now, and it's my favorite chalk that I have ever used. And now, Chalk Cartel has launched a new size option, the half kilo. The half kilo gets you 500 grams of pure, uncut, high-performance climbing chalk in a more convenient package. Instead of buying quarters, you can now save on dollars and packaging and get more of the stickiest white powder on the market. The half kilo uses less packaging overall and comes in a fully compostable bag, so you can chalk up to your elbows during these hot summer months while respecting the environment. The folks at Chalk Cartel are also offering their customers a limited one-time offer. Right now, you can get a free logo brush with every half kilo or kilo purchase. Now, unfortunately, you cannot combine this deal with other discounts like Nugget. You can use the code Nugget to get 20% off, but you can pick whichever code you want based on what you're buying and use whichever one gets you the better deal. So check out Chalk Cartel. Head over to chalkcartel.com to pick up a half kilo of premium climbing chalk and decide between their limited time offer for a free logo brush or use code Nugget at checkout for 20% off your next purchase. That's chalkcartel.com and get ready to join the cartel.
Chalk Cartel. You're either for us or we're against you.
This episode is also brought to you by Rhino Skin Solutions. This is my go-to when it comes to taking care of my skin. I have been using the performance cream to keep my skin dry because it's summer and I'm training and I'm sweating a lot, and it really helps to keep my skin dry for training or for outdoor climbing. I've been using the repair cream in the evenings to help my skin heal between sessions on my boulder projects. Whether you have dry, glassy skin or sweaty skin and you have trouble keeping chalk on your hands like me, Rhino Skin Solutions has products that are designed just for you and your skin type. Check out my episode with founder Justin Brown, episode 22 of The Nugget, to learn more about which products are right for you and learn how to dial in your skin for an upcoming performance season. That's a super valuable episode, still one of my favorites. And I definitely recommend it if you want to try Rhino products. If you want to level up your skin game, head over to rhinoskinsolutions.com and enter code NUGGET at checkout for 20% off your next order. That's rhinoskinsolutions.com. Use code NUGGET at checkout for 20% off and start taking better care of your precious skin today. And finally, this episode is brought to you by Grasshopper Climbing. I've had a lot of great conversations lately on the podcast, and one of the things that keeps coming up again and again when it comes to getting better at climbing is consistency. There's no magic hangboard program or bouldering routine that is going to get you super duper strong in 6 weeks. The key to making lasting gains in your strength and your climbing technique is consistency. Just climbing or training regularly for years and years. But consistency can be hard. If you have kids or live in a city and work a 9-to-5 job and only have the evenings free to train and have to compete with crowds at the gym, it can be really hard to stick to a consistent schedule. Luckily, the folks at Grasshopper designed the perfect solution. The Grasshopper board was designed to give you an entire climbing gym experience right in your home. And the best part, they did such a good job with the hold shaping and layout that the Grasshopper board will be right for you whether you are a total beginner or you climb V15. It's so efficient, it's so good for training, and most importantly, it's super fun to climb on. But don't take my word for it, because the folks at Grasshopper just want you to try it out and see for yourself. If you want to learn more, head over to grasshopperclimbing.com or check them out on Instagram at grasshopperclimbing. Check out their boards and reach out to their sales team to see which board solution is right for you. And be sure to tell them I sent you, because the folks at Grasshopper are offering you guys, my dear listeners, $500 off when you order a fully kitted out 8x10 foot Grasshopper board. $500 or even more if you upgrade to a larger board. Again, that's grasshopperclimbing.com or at grasshopperclimbing on Instagram to check out the Grasshopper board. Hello, friends. Welcome to another episode of the Nugget Climbing Podcast. This is your host, Stephen Dimmitt. And today is a little bit different than usual because I have two guests on the podcast today. Stian Christophersen and Martin Mobråten, both from Norway. These guys are the co-authors of The Climbing Bible. The Climbing Bible, technical, physical, and mental training for rock climbing. This is by far the most comprehensive climbing training book I have ever seen. It covers everything. It covers how to get strong for climbing. It covers how to get fit, how to work on technique, mental game, how to recover from injuries, everything you can think of all in one place. It's awesome. And the authors, Stian and Martin, are super legit climbers. I'm actually just going to read their bio from the Climbing Bible. Stian Christophersen is a physiotherapist and coach, has climbed for over 20 years, been an athlete on the national team, and was the 2009 Norwegian bouldering champion. He has also climbed extensively outdoors and has first ascents of routes up to 8C, that's 514B, and boulder problems up to Font 8B+, that's V14. Stian is a formal national team coach in climbing and is a personal trainer for several of Norway's best climbers. He has also been responsible for the Norwegian Climbing Federation's education of coaches, and in addition to running his own physiotherapy practice, he educates the next generation of coaches at both a national and international level. And Martin Mobråten has a master's degree in civil engineering, has climbed for over 20 years, been an athlete on the Norwegian national team, and is a former Nordic champion in climbing. He has climbed extensively outdoors and has red-pointed several routes graded 8C+, that's 514C, and boulder problems up to Font 8C, that's V15. Martin has coached the Norwegian Climbing Federation's youth recruits and many of the stronger juniors in the Trondheim community for the past 10 years. Martin works daily with climbing courses, route setting, and facilitating climbing both indoors and outdoors. I'm going to summarize all that. These guys are both total badass climbers. They're super educated. They've been doing this stuff forever. They've done a lot of coaching, and they took 20 plus years each of climbing and coaching experience and put it all together into a book called The Climbing Bible. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. We talked about many, many things. I spent some time getting to know both Stian and Martin, and then we dove into the book and some of my most burning questions about how to get better at rock climbing. I'll let you guys discover the rest, and with that, we'll dive in. I hope you enjoy this wide-ranging conversation with Stian and Martin.
Cause no one can do it like we do it, like we do it, like we do it. Cause no one can do it like we do it, like we do it, like we do it.
I think we should start by having everyone say their name. Yeah, I want you guys to each say your name so that listeners will know who's talking from this point on, and so that I get the pronunciation right when I introduce you guys. And then also where we're all talking from, because this is kind of a fun modern experience, that's only possible with modern technology. But I'm in my van, as you guys can see, and I'm in Flagstaff, Arizona right now, just parked on a little Forest Service road. Gonna go climbing later today. But yeah, Stian, maybe you go next.
I can go next. I'm Stian Christophersen. I'm currently sitting in my basement in Oslo, surrounded by all the laundry from a family of four. So I just squeezed into a couch in the basement, and it's 7:00 in the evening. So looking forward to this.
Yeah, my name is Martin Mobråten, and I'm up in the north of Norway now on a work trip and free diving trip. So yeah.
Awesome. And
I'm going to Flagstaff in October. Just had to say it.
Yeah, Stian just mentioned that, actually. That's really cool. Have you been here before?
No, never to Flagstaff. It's one of the places I really wanted to go for a while, but I've never been.
Yeah, same. I've heard great things and had never been here. This is my first time here, so it's fun to check it out. It's a little bit warm. I think you're going to be psyched that you're coming in October. It's definitely not ideal right now, but fun to check it out. Awesome. And then to get to know you guys better before we jump into the interview and start, I have so many questions about your book, about each of you and what you guys have learned from a lifetime of climbing and coaching. I think it'd be really fun to have you two introduce each other because it's really hard. I always find it really hard to introduce myself on a podcast. Like, I'm Steven, I'm 33, just say the same things. But you guys know each other so well. Let's do it that way. I think it'd be really fun to have you two introduce one another as climbers, as professionals, whatever else you have going on. But Stian, let's start with you introducing Martin, if you don't mind.
No, I can go first. This will be fun.
You're nice, man.
Yeah, true. Martin is the older one because he's 1 year older than me. So he's old. I'm young. He's 39, turning 40 this year. He has a wife that is way smarter than him. She's a doctor. He's currently route setting as a job, but is actually a civil engineer. So he's pretty smart after all. And Martin is probably one of the most gifted climbers that I've met throughout my life. He did hard routes for his time when he was quite young. I think he was like 15 when he did his first 8B, and this was back in 1996 or 7, something like that. And then has basically just kept going, done some really hard routes and boulders up to 8C around in both South Africa and Hueco. I think he actually has a very hard first ascent in the Esperanza cave that no one really knows that Martin did, which is the left entrance into Esperanza, right? Martin has no breaks when he's psyched on something, which has been really good for me. Since we've known each other since we've been 13. So it's good to hang out with people that are genuinely psyched with no limitation on what's possible to achieve.
I love this. This was such a good idea. Okay, Martin, your turn.
Yeah. Thank you, Stian. Nice words. Kind of, reminds me of your speech in my wedding. So I'll just repeat my speech in your wedding then.
That's true. I think this is the problem actually, because we've known each other for so long. It's like I think we maybe compliment each other maybe once a year.
Yeah. No, but I can start by the beginning though, because I think we met when we were like 13 or something. I was really into fishing. I think like the opportunistic version of myself. I'm probably always like that. I saw you and you had a boat. And I thought that if I got to know this guy who had a boat, I would probably catch some fishes that were way bigger than the ones I got from shore. So yeah, I got to know you. Of course, you let me come in the boat and we went fishing. And then your father was climbing and you had gone with him climbing for some times. And I joined you. And I think for me, it was like the moment that I got really stuck into something. I knew that climbing was something for me. And I think for you, when I was really psyched on it, and you had someone to do it with that wasn't your father and his friends, you got really psyched on it as well. So we have been climbing quite a lot ever since. We lived for a year in France. We traveled all over Europe many times. We did all the competitions and everything. And later on, you got like established a bit earlier than me. You studied physiotherapy and got married to Karianne and got a couple of kids, Kasper and Oda, which have now started to climb. And like climbing wise, for me, I think you're like you're like a really good climbing partner because you have other qualities than I do. I'm pretty like physically strong. I'm strong in positions. I'm strong in like, maybe the Hueco style of climbing. Whereas you are really good in the, I would say more technical font style of climbing. You can do the perfect dead point in first go, whereas I have to practice it for maybe like 1 hour before I can do it the same way. So I think you're a really good partner for me in that way. I can learn a lot by climbing with you. There's nothing more to say about you, Stian.
This is great. So you guys have been close friends, climbing partners for like 35 years, 36 years, something like that. Is that right? Or no, I'm sorry, 25,
we are
25 or 26 years.
Yeah.
You're not that old.
I'm trying to add a decade to your lives. I'm sorry about that. So describe your friendship and your partnership now. You guys both have your own families and careers and things. What does that look like today? Do you guys still climb together primarily, or are you? I mean, obviously you just wrote a book together, but apart from that, describe your friendship and partnership these days.
For me, it has been quite easy because I've settled in and have 2 kids, and Martin doesn't have kids or family yet. So it's been really easy for me because I could usually just name a date, and then he'll say we'll go wherever we want to go. So we still climb a lot together. Besides like the local climbing partners here in Oslo, then Martin is the one that I've been traveling with for the last 10 years, I think. Like basically, I'm not sure if I've been on a climbing trip over the past decade that hasn't been with you, Martin, actually, which is quite scary when you come to think of it.
Yeah, I can't say the same. I've been on a lot of climbing trips without you, but I've probably been on all your climbing trips as well. Yeah. Mm. No, but it's like I think we're the kind of friends that it's very easy to go on a trip with you because it's the way that it has always been. You know, I mean, we know each other very well, and it's always fun when we go traveling. So of course there has been less trips together for the last 10 years than what we maybe would have wanted. But the trips that we had have been, they've been really good. When was the last trip we went on?
England. We went to Sheffield and climbed with Jerry Moffat. That was quite cool.
Oh, wow.
That was
That's amazing.
That was amazing. It really was.
I'm still starstruck. So
yeah,
that's quite
sent
cool.
him like a mail yesterday because we wrote like an article about him for a magazine that we're publishing like yearly. And just like that is actually like he's actually answering our emails. It's like so stupid, but yeah.
No,
cool.
I can relate. I had the same experience when he showed up on a Zoom call just like this. I'm like, wow, I'm staring at Jerry Moffat right now. He's just in his living room. This is amazing.
Yeah,
it's so wild. Yeah, so cool. I want to take a little bit more time to just introduce you to as individuals and as a friendship, partnership. What is something that each of you admires about the other and something that you've learned from one another?
I can go first with this one, Stian, if it's okay.
Sure.
Yeah.
Just because I had something, I thought of something. No, I'm very restless. I have a really hard time of be happy in the moment. And I'm not sure if you would agree, Stian, but to me, you seem very happy with the situation you're in, whether it's the climbing trip or if it's staying home with your kids and wife, or if it's going fishing or spear fishing or hunting, whatever. You never seem too long to be somewhere else than you are at in the moment, or where we are at in the moment. So I'm trying to learn that from you, but it's hard not to be like pulled somewhere else. If it makes sense.
Yeah, it made sense. I'm glad to hear. I guess that's kind of a psychological self-defense system that you built when you get kids, that you just have to have to enjoy the moment. No, but I think this is maybe where we've been a good combination for so many years, that I think I am maybe more present in the moment than you are by nature. And so it's the same for me, that this eager to push forward, to do other things, to explore more. Like I mentioned in when I did the speech in your wedding, that I don't think I would have experienced half of what I have throughout my life if it hadn't been for this need you have to go a bit further, to explore more, to go and do stuff. So I think we might feed a bit off each other on that part. So that's what I admire, at least. I mean, you left a very high paid, high status job to go climbing and route setting instead, which is like 1 in a million makes that choice. And when you have kids and have family, those kinds of choices are inspirational in the way that there's always something you can do to fit those things that you really want to do into your life.
So let's talk about that a little bit. So you guys are both really high-level climbers yourselves. You wrote this book together, but you have totally different careers. I mean, Stian, you're a physiotherapist. You work, I think, primarily with high-performance climbers, but you have a wider practice as well. And then, Martin, you have a master's in engineering and then have pivoted, and now you're route setting and climbing. So what does a day in the life look like for each of you? You could also, it doesn't have to be a specific day. You could kind of talk me through like what normal life looks like what's a week look like? What do you do for work? How often are you getting out climbing and things like that?
I can go first. I guess my week is a bit more routine than Martin's. So I have a physical therapy practice. So I have patients 3 days a week, and then the 2 other days are supposed to be for other lines of work, but are usually I usually try to go climb instead. Because I start my day by waking up 2 kids and a wife, and then making breakfast and lunch boxes and all the rest. And then if on the days that I have patients, I go to the clinic and I work with patients until 4. And then you come home, and then you make dinner and travel to all different activities with your kids, coach handball teams and climbing, like youth climbing teams for the kids. And then you're home by 8 or 9. And then it's not much left of the day. So that's why I keep these Tuesdays and Thursdays of mine quite sacred, to go climbing or to go training, and then try to fit in all the other stuff.
Nice. Do you block those days out entirely for climbing and training? You try not to work at all on those days?
I try to, but it depends a bit. Like, I also run a podcast with another friend of mine, which is more related to physiotherapy and musculoskeletal health in Norway. So I try to put some of those interviews on those days. And when we have deadlines, for instance, for the book or lectures or other stuff, then those always go into the Tuesdays and Thursdays. But then if I know that I'm going out climbing, then I can usually do all of my work in the evenings or very early in the mornings, and then you have the rest of the day off, usually. So that's a week in the life.
Thanks for that. Yeah, I think we lost Martin.
Yeah. He said the computer died, and he's going to fix it.
Okay. Well, maybe let's just keep going, since I don't want to take up all your time, and then we can kind of fill him in. Tell me about some of your own proudest climbing accomplishments. I know you recently climbed, I believe, your first couple 9As, which is so inspiring to me to hear that after 25, 26 years of climbing, that you're climbing your hardest still. But yeah, I don't mean to answer for you. What are some of your proudest climbing accomplishments to date?
I think that first one you mentioned is one, but we can come back to that. I think one moment that I really remember is doing the first route that I climbed that was rated 8A when I was 15. That was a really big moment, obviously, as it always is when you break into different grades. It was also a moment because I came home. I did this route in Corsica on a family holiday, and then you come home, and then it gets downgraded just because you did it, and it wasn't in Norway. So it was a moment of contrasts from like being really satisfied with accomplishing something, and then being hammered down afterwards. Not necessarily hammered down, but I think the climbing community was harsher like 20 years ago than what it is now. So it was educational, but a bit harsh. So it was this moment of contrasts that was really good. I remember completing a trifecta in Bukes of like old school routes. There are 3 really classical routes on the Obodumon sector in Bukes that I'd been looking at since we were like 15, 16. And these are Taboo, La Rosa de la Vampire, and Chuka. And I did La Rosa de la Vampire as the last of those 3 when we lived in Aix-en-Provence. And that was also a moment because I'd been looking at those routes for like 4 years when we were there on vacation. And then suddenly you'd done them all 3. So that was quite cool.
What an amazing experience. I think so many people listening to this can relate. Like you, especially for those of us that started later in life, you know, like not as 6-year-old kids or whatever, we can just remember these moments of seeing something and it just being like, oh, wow, that's that thing, you know, and then a few years later, you've climbed it, or you've climbed all these classic ones at this cliff. And it's such an empowering feeling that just feeds that like want to see what else is possible, you know?
Yeah, definitely. And it sort of like represents more than a grade. It represents something that has been in your dreams for a while. I remember bringing home a postcard of Antoine Le Menestrel, like this classical picture where he's biting on a rose, doing the rose move on La Rosa de la Vampire. And been looking at that for a long time, and then you've done it, and it's not that it's really hard or anything. I've done things that are way harder, but it's just that accomplishment, which is cool.
Just for context, how difficult are those 3 routes?
Taboo and Chuka are 8A plus routes, okay. French 8A plus.
So 13C for us.
13C, yeah. And then La Rosa de la Vampire is 8B, 13D.
Got it. Okay.
And then yeah, like most recently, I did a first ascent of a route last fall in October, which I've given 9A, which is the hardest thing I've done ever. And I felt that I had one really big gap in my repertoire as a climber, and that has been like projecting something that's really hard, maybe too hard, but just sticking with it, and then seeing if it goes or not. So, and then COVID happened, and the gyms closed, and all the activities for the kids got shut down. So suddenly you had more time. So I decided to like invest like a training season throughout the winter, and then just a whole outdoor season on just that project, to see if it was possible. And if it wasn't, then at least I tried. And then, so I don't know how many days it took me that season. I'd been trying it on and off for a few years, but I think maybe 30 or 40 days that season. So I think I had 3 days on different routes that season last year. So that was also like more a manifestation of a projecting process that I really missed in my own climbing, more than like the grade. But obviously the grades do matter. So,
how long had you spent on other projects before that?
7 days.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, that's a big difference. That's a big difference.
So that was a step. It was a step up.
Yeah. How was that experience for you? Did you enjoy the process? Do you think you'll do something like that again?
Yes and no. I really enjoyed the process. Actually, it was really cool to be that psyched on something for such a long time. I'd never had that, that projecting experience where you fall off quite high and then you'll never get up there again. I never had that. So it was fun. Like I made high points until I clipped the chains. So it might have been turning into a nightmare if I started falling off earlier again.
Yeah.
So, and you do get mentally disturbed throughout a year of that projecting process. And I'm not sure if I'm able to focus that much on one single thing once again. I mean, I had to have a sit down with my wife in April and just explaining that this is really important. So I just have to prioritize this over family dinners and over everything else. And then COVID made all those decisions way easier. I think this year would have been impossible to do the same.
Just because of all the distractions and different opportunities and things?
Yeah, and it's like you could always prioritize, but I do actually want to spend time with my family as well. So like to skip everything that we do together as a family for me to go on an egocentric trip down to one crag to do one route. I'm not sure if I'm able to do that process or justify that process in like the normal daily life. So it was a good opportunity last year.
Yeah, I'm sure that conversation, I mean, explaining how important it is to your wife, like that's so important, but also just reminding her like this isn't going to be forever. You know, this is like something that's really important right now and it will end and there will be a different balance, you know, moving forward.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah.
It could have never ended.
Right.
And then, but then it's like you're satisfied for like 3 days. And then it's like, all right, what's next? What's next then? Right now, but I think that's like you have these voices inside your head. And we talked a lot about this, Martin and I, that the minute you do something, you just up the ante a bit, and then you go further. So this has actually been sticking around for quite a bit longer, though, that satisfaction. But still, it's like you're done. I mean, happiness in that context is just fluctuating. It just takes you to the next sweet thing.
Right. Such a common human tendency. Yeah. I'm glad it stuck a little bit longer than 3 days after years of committing to the same climb. That's good to hear. Well, Martin, welcome back.
Thank you.
So I had asked Stian.
It's hard with the internet and stuff up here, you know.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No worries at all. I'll catch you up a little bit. So I had been talking to Stian about a day in the life or a week in the life. Like, what does that look like for you? I'd love to hear you answer the same question. And then we've been talking about some of his proudest climbing accomplishments, and I'd love to hear about some of yours as well.
Yeah, sure. If it's a typical day, I could actually describe this day because I think it's quite typical of my day. So I actually live in Trondheim, which is in the middle of Norway. Now I'm up in the north of Norway. It's a 13 hours drive up here. I drove up here because I wanted to do a bit of spearfishing on the way and also while being up here. So today I've been route setting for 8 hours and then I tested the routes, came home, had some food. Now I'm doing this podcast with you, and later on this evening I'll probably go spearfishing and shoot a halibut that weighs 50 kilos. Wow. That's not a typical day, but I'll try. But no, like Stian said, I tend to have no breaks, so I tend to feel my days quite full. I'm really tired and I have to like stay in bed and sleep for a couple of days, and then I do the same all over again for a couple of weeks, and then I get tired again. So I think that's like I get to experience a lot and do a lot, but it's really hard to, or at least now, earlier it was easier for me to have focus on climbing and do hard things because you kind of need to have focus to do hard things. So I think that's actually hard because there are so many things that's fun to do, and it's so much fun to climb a lot. So yeah, projecting and sending hard things it tends to be hard for me to do. But that's a typical day.
Okay. We could have a whole podcast about this, I'm sure, but if you have any advice or thoughts that come to the top of your mind, I'd love to hear, how do you balance your energy that you put into route setting with your own climbing and training? Because that is like the greatest challenge. Like so many route climbers become route climbers because they love rock climbing. They want to build a life around it. They want to be in the industry, you know, but it's brutal. I mean, I don't have very many friends who seem to be able to sustain it and climb well without just being injured all the time.
Yeah, it's very hard. I think when did I quit my job? I think it was like, 6 years ago. And then I had a couple of years of climbing where I did pretty well in climbing. And since then, it's just gone downhill, huh? So I think I'm way weaker now than I was when I had like a normal job. So it's not a good idea if you want to climb really hard, but if you want to have like the opportunity to climb a lot and like sort of plan your own working year and travel, then it's kind of a good plan. But don't expect to do really hard stuff because you're always tired. It's today I set 10 routes from easy routes and up until maybe like, I don't know, 7C, 7C plus, and then you have to test them, and then you can't really train afterwards. And I think the testing and the route setting is just draining your body. You don't get fit from it at all. So it is really hard. I think what I've learned the last year though, or maybe the last 2 years, is I don't do like I don't plan my training a lot, but what I do is that I train hard when I don't route set, because normally I can set for a week and then I have 1 or 2 weeks off. So I train hard in that time. Maybe I take like a couple of days off after work is finished, and then I train, and then I don't train while I route set because it's just too much.
Okay.
But it is hard. A lot of climbers want to route set and climb hard, and it's really hard.
Do you enjoy it? Have you thought about going back to engineering, or do you love what you do now?
Yeah, I think a lot about that. I like it. I like setting boulders, and I like setting for comps. It's fun. I don't like, because I don't set like daily in a gym where I live. I travel and do route setting, and then if I travel somewhere and stay there for a week, I probably set like 50 routes in 5 days or something, and then it's not fun because the routes they're quite easy. Some of them are fun, of course, but a lot of the routes are just super easy routes. You don't have to think when you set them. You just put the holes on the wall, so it's not so interesting. So I think a lot, whether or not it's sustainable to do this work for many years to come. I mean, my wife is 30 now, and if we are going to have kids, it's probably going to be like in a couple of years, I don't know. And I don't think it's sustainable if we get kids because it's too much traveling. But yeah, time will tell. Maybe we sell a lot of books so we don't have to route set so much. That'd be nice.
I hope so, for your sake.
Yeah.
I hope that this conversation helps with that as well. Tell me.
You're an engineer.
Say that again.
Are you an engineer?
Yeah, I studied material science engineering. Yeah, so I worked in aerospace for like 7 years.
Are you happy to leave it behind?
I am happy to leave it behind, yeah. But I can relate to what you're saying. Like you have this idea in your mind that if you get into the climbing industry in some capacity or just have a lot more time climbing, it'll like be magic, it'll be awesome and you'll just start crushing everything. And it's not really that simple. And it's been a reminder that, actually having some amount of structure in your life and having kind of a built-in routine and being able to plan around work can work really well for progressing at climbing and making sure that you're not overdoing it. I think I had more intention and focus when I was training, when I had that cubicle job.
Yep.
And now, I can travel, I can go chase the weather and things like that. And it just makes you feel a little bit more scattered and fragmented and less focused. But it's a lot more fun. Like I'm loving it. I'm enjoying it. But I've been kind of thinking about lately, like what does it look like for me to create some constraints in my life that help me find that focus, whether that's just like picking a very, very specific goal and being okay with not climbing as many things as possible, or even building in like a work season and training season where I'm in a gym, and just spending more time working on business things. But yeah, overall, I'm happy to leave it behind.
Yeah.
What about some of your proudest climbing accomplishments, Martin?
Yeah. I've done more in bouldering than in lead. I have a really hard time like keeping focus over a long time, and it seems easier to do boulders quite fast. If you're going to do really hard routes, it takes a lot of time. I've tried Thor's hammer in Flatanger quite a lot. I haven't been able to do it. I go there, like I start a project in spring, and I'm pretty strong when I get there, and I can do the moves quite easily. And then I start to get the endurance to maybe link the whole thing, but then I'm too weak to do the moves, so I can't get through the bottom. So it's really hard for me. I lose patience. I stay there for a couple of weeks, and then I just start doing easier stuff. I find it really hard. But bouldering, I have done some things that I'm quite happy with. I think actually like my proudest Or I say I have two things that I've done that I'm quite proud about. The first one is probably an FA at Wingsound called Wolverine that I projected for quite some time. I tried it over like a couple of years. I don't think I was strong enough in the beginning, but then after coming back from Hueco the first time we were there, I was able to do like the crux and do it to the top quite fast. But then it's quite a lot harder to do like the crux from the beginning. But then I knew I could do it, so then I projected it quite seriously though, for probably half a year, and I did it in winter. And it was, I had like I wouldn't say like a competition with Tilo to do it first. Tilo is like a Norwegian climber, is very strong. But we were both trying it, and I got a bit stressed that he was getting really close, but he lived in Oslo and I live in Trondheim, which is way closer. So it was easier for me to go there and try it more than for him. And it was like, in the end, it was like a bit stressing, because sometimes it's just fun to project something. And but I really wanted to do that one first. And then it was a bit stressing in the end because he got so close. Then I did it though, and I was really happy. So that's probably like one of my it was the first really hard first ascent though, which was really cool. And I also like first time Nalle Hukkataival went to Vingsand. I was trying it with him, and he wasn't able to do it in a couple of trips. And I mean, if he had rain and shitty conditions, but it just felt really cool to do something that was really hard. And I knew it was hard because really strong people had tried it. So probably that was like the coolest, like doing something hard experience. But I think maybe my best experience was repeating a boulder that Bernd Sanger put up on an island outside of Vingsand. It's called Shantaram. And it's like a really long boulder, probably 15, 20 moves. And I was projecting it basically by myself. Nicky Seria, the Italian, he was there in the end. And Tilo was also there trying it a bit in the end. But I had so many trips where I draw my car out there on a day trip. It's a 3 hours drive, and borrow the boat and draw the boat, like a small shitty boat, for half an hour. Park the boat, dragged it onto the shore, and walked all my pads up there. It took like maybe 5 hours just to get to the boulder.
Wow. And
tried it for it was always so cold. There's like a wind tunnel there, so it's really cold. And tried it for like a couple of 2 or 3 hours, and then packed up my shit and took the long way back. I did that for maybe, 10 days or something. And I kind of like that experience though. It's draining when you do it, but it feels like an adventure, even though it's quite close to your own home and you've been there many times. It feels a bit tougher than just doing like a boulder really close to the city. So I think maybe that was my proudest achievement, to finally do that boulder, I think.
And I asked Stian to do this. Just for context, what are the grades of those things that you've just been talking about? That first ascent, did you propose a grade for that?
Yeah, I proposed AP plus for it.
AP plus?
I think it is. I think it's a hard one. B14. It's probably a hard one. Shantaram, I probably think it's 8C, but I'm not totally sure. Bard only said it was like his hardest thing ever. And for me, it felt harder than other 8B pluses I had done at that time. And Nicky doesn't say anything about grades, so it's really hard to... I don't know. Probably like it's 8B plus or 8C, I don't know.
Yeah. Great. Well, thank you both for this. It's really fun to get to know you guys a little bit before we dive into this book that you wrote. I just think it's important it's fun for me to get to know you, but it's also so important for the listeners to get a sense of who you guys are. But let's dive into this book. I've got a bunch of notes in front of me, a bunch of questions for you guys. How did the idea for the book come about, and where did the name come from? Let's start with that. And Stian, you haven't been talking for a while, so if you have thoughts, let's start with you.
It's good. I can just sit back and have a beer. That's quite relaxing. So I think the thought of writing a book had been on my mind for quite some time. I'd done my physical therapy education. I'd done my coaching education, and I'd coached the Norwegian national team for 4 or 5 years. And you start to accumulate quite a lot of knowledge from different sources. And at least in Norway, there was lacking a book talking about training for climbing, basically. And I thought that it would be cool to try to condensate connect all the dots that you'd learn both as a climber and as a physio and as a coach, and get all of that into a book. But I needed someone without any breaks. So I told Martin I was going to Trondheim to do a lecture, and he picked me up at the airport, and we drove out to Vingsand to go bouldering, and it was in January and just snowing and shit. And I just said that, I've been thinking about writing a book about training for climbing. And he just looked at me. I was like, yeah, let's do that. And then that was in 2017, January 2017, and then by October 2018, the book came out in Norway.
Wow.
So that was kind of how it was born. And the name, the Climbing Bible, very pretentious name. It was. I mean, we wrote this book for Norway. We never imagined that it would be something that we should take internationally. And we sort of have, I hope at least, we have the street cred in Norway to name a book the Climbing Bible. And it was our editor who just said that, like, with all this content, this is like a climbing Bible. You should just call it the Climbing Bible. And it was like, yeah, that's cocky enough. So let's do that. And then now in 2022, seeing that this book comes out in Italy with that title, it feels like, holy shit. People have, they must think that we're absolutely cocky. But yeah.
Nice. So the first version of it was written in Norwegian, and now it's been translated into a bunch of other languages.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting here with both books with the English version right in front of me. That's another question I had. So you've got the Climbing Bible, technical, physical, and mental training for rock climbing, with a nice photo of Mina, Leslie Vujastic, on the cover. She's been on the podcast. And then the Climbing Bible practical exercises. So why 2 books, and how do these 2 books interact with one another?
No, I don't think when we started the first book, we thought about writing a second. And especially after finishing it, I wasn't all that excited about writing a second book. I was kind of fed up with writing the first book. But the first book, you probably read a bit of it and seen it. It's the theoretical frameworks for the different types of training for climbing. So we have the mental, you have the physical, and you have the technical climbing, and you also have the tactics and the general the general training, and also all of the injuries and how to prevent them. And it was just so much, and we had some exercises to train the different things, and we had people reading through the books saying that, okay, maybe you should include some other exercises, like explaining how to train the different things. And we included some of them in the first book, but there are just so many that we used. Stian has been a coach for basically his whole climbing career, and I've been as well, except for maybe the last 5. I haven't been a coach then. And we felt we needed to give, then again, the readers in Norway, though, all these exercises. And it was just enough to fill another book. So, yeah. I think like the Climbing Bible is the book that you have at home and you read. And then the practical exercises is the book that you bring to the gym and get inspiration, to try different exercises for the session you're having.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And who are these books for? Like, what need were you seeing in the climbing community? Who was your audience when you were writing the Climbing Bible? Is it for everybody, or for newer climbers that are confused and don't have information?
I would say there is something for everybody in both books. But in in relation to some other books that are on the market, I would say we have more for beginners and intermediate climbers, whereas I think some of the other books addresses the more advanced climber, and they tend to focus quite a lot on the physical training, whereas we want to focus, and I think we do, a lot on the technical aspects and also quite a lot on the mental aspects, and of course the physical aspects of training as well. But yeah, so maybe in relation to other books, more for the beginners and intermediate climbers.
Okay. Stian, do you have any additional thoughts?
Yeah, I think it was quite important for us to write a book that was comprehensive for everyone, regardless of their climbing experience. I think I'd read all of the books that were in a language that I could understand when it came to training for climbing before we wrote this. And even though most of them are really good, they're quite technical when it comes to how they explain things, and especially when it comes to the physical aspect of performance. And I didn't really find it necessary to replicate all of that and put it into a book. So we wanted to make it easier to understand. And we had a really good editor who is a really keen climber herself. And she said, I don't want to feel dumb, quotation, when I read a book. I want to get this feeling of understanding and all the light bulbs going off, and that I can relate to what you're writing about. So if I don't understand your writing, then you need to rewrite it, basically. So we did that a lot. And I think the challenge with that is you'll probably lose like the high-end climbers, maybe, that look into the nitty-gritty details on how to do like the perfect dead hang protocol or these kinds of things. But then again, when it comes to training and exercise, then you have principles over methods. So I hope we had done a job in the Climbing Bible to present and explain the principles, and then you can adapt and individualize the methods based on those principles. So there should be something in there also for the higher end climbers, but like Martin said, then it's written in a way that it makes it comprehensible also for those with less climbing experience.
Mm-hmm. So Stian, you and I actually connected through Rannveig Ambolt. She's become a friend of mine, and I know that you guys have worked together for a long time, and you helped her rehab after her injury. So I actually reached out to her and have some questions for you guys from her, and I want to kick off kind of a discussion about like your philosophy of improving at climbing with this question from Rannveig. She wrote, he's pretty physical in his training program. She's talking about you, Stian. Have him discuss that, and then what he thinks about the mental and technique games and where they fit in. So I thought that was really interesting because you and I had a conversation a few weeks ago, and you talked a lot about the mental and the technique sides of climbing and how that often gets missed in the modern age where we're so obsessed with the quantifiable things, the physical training and things like that. But you guys also have done quite a lot of physical assessments. And I actually was just listening to you on the Lattice podcast, talking to Tom Randall and talking about your 9C assessment and some of the different physical performance factors or strength factors that we can use to assess our climbing and find weaknesses and things like that. So I'd be curious to hear about your philosophy when it comes to coaching and helping people improve. How do you think about the physical needs of climbers, and how would you weigh that against the mental and the technical side of the sport?
Yeah, should I go first since it was for Rannveig? Because I could, I guess for her specifically, it's like over the last years, it's a lot easier to be an online coach and focus on the physical part because you can quantify it and measure it. So then obviously if you make a training program for someone, it's a lot easier to tell them how to do dead hangs or how to do a bouldering circuit than to actually have a look at them while climbing. It takes a lot more work. So maybe that's also as a bit of the explanation. I think maybe Europeans and in Norway as well, we've been traditionally focused on the physical aspect of climbing. I think, and then Martin, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we come from this exercise physiology world where we try to use that method into becoming better. Whereas you look at the Japanese climbers, they spend way less time on the physical aspect, on how to train, and more on the movement side. And they seem to be doing pretty well. I guess they have 50% in the bouldering finals every time in the World Cups. So
Yeah,
I think that we can learn a lot from how they approach climbing through movement and the mental aspect. And it's always a pendulum swinging, I guess. So it has been more on the physical aspect, I think, traditionally, both in Norway and other European countries. And then maybe it's starting to swing a bit more to the technical and mental aspects.
Martin, do you have anything to add to that?
Nope.
Okay, great. So in kind of talking about, like, I want to hear about you guys as coaches and you guys as high-level climbers who have observed many climbers throughout your lives. And in presenting all this information in this book and having so many different elements to learn about and focus on, from all the different aspects of physical training and mental training and techniques we can work on, and visualization and confidence and all sorts of different things. I'd love to hear like what patterns you guys have observed. And I have a list of questions here about what keeps people stuck. And I'm going to ask a series of questions and we can kind of go through it in whatever way makes sense to you guys. But what keeps a 5'11" climber stuck, and what keeps people that are newer from reaching 5'12"? And then how does that change as we get better at climbing and as we get more experience? Like, do you see different themes pop up for people that are stuck at 5'12" and can't break into 5'13"? What about people who've been climbing 5'13" for a long time but can't break into 5'14" or feel stuck at the 5'13" range? Yeah, I'm really interested to hear if there's trends or themes that have shown up for you guys. Martin, do you want to go first?
Yeah. You want me to talk about how to go to the next grade, or like trends in general that we see or that I see?
Yeah, trends that you see. Like, what are the most common areas where people get stuck at different levels?
Yeah, it's a wide question where to begin. I think that a lot of the climbers nowadays, they train in really good gyms with quite decent route setting. And that's one of the things that we tried to highlight in the second book with some of the exercises in there, is that if you train at a gym that has a finite amount of boulders, there's not going to be all that many boulders that challenges the thing that you as a climber should focus on with your weaknesses and strengths and everything. I mean, if you want to start to become more dynamic, that has kind of been my focus for many years, because I'm quite a static climber, whereas Stian is more dynamic. Maybe there is like 10 boulders or 5 or 10 boulders at the gym that is suitable for me to train these like abilities or dynamic movements. And I think that the climbers today, they need to learn how to train different techniques and the different fundamentals in climbing without training it on the set boulders. They need to be able to use the walls that are there with the holds and make it up themselves. I mean, when we started climbing, the bouldering walls, they were just spray walls with a bunch of holes, and all we did was to make up our own boulders. So then if you do that, you can always have almost like an unlimited amount of boulders that make you train for what you need to train on. So I think that's like the trend I see now. People, they just go to the gym and they try really hard to do this boulder. And once they have done it, they never try it again. They're basically done with it. Maybe they try it as a warm-up if it was an easy one the next time they come there. But so how can we like make them train technique and get better technical climbers with the boulders that are there? And let's take pinching, for example. So one of the exercises is to not pinch the holds on the boulders that you are trying. So if you're not able to pinch them, if you have a side pull and you pinch it, you can lean your ass out of the wall and you can climb technically quite bad. But if you only climb with 3-finger open-handed, you would have to stay on the side to be able to use the hold. So it makes you, if you have done a boulder with pinching, maybe you can try later on to use only 4 fingers like on the side, and then maybe 3 fingers open and 2-finger open. Just practice the boulders. And maybe then if you want to start doing some dynamic movements like a easy dyno or like an easy flick, if you're a young climber and you want to start competing, you need to be able to do the flick movements, you need to be able to do the clutch movements, the pogos, everything. Why can't you just start doing that on jugs on the vertical wall and practice the movements? You don't have to find the perfectly set boulder to practice it, because you need to learn how the movement is done. And yeah, just find a couple of jugs and do a small flick. It's kind of hard to explain it with only words, but I'm trying to do it with my hands as well. But
no, that all makes I think that all makes perfect sense. It's such an interesting phenomenon that we have, or challenge that we have, where we have so much access to such great climbing gyms now. It's really easy to just go cragging at the gym and just have tons of fun and just only climb on things that are really fun. And I mean, as long as I've been climbing, I still default to that every time I go into a new gym. You know, even if I have a training day that I'm supposed to do, you go in there, you've never climbed in there before. It's so tempting to just climb like 30 or 40 new boulders and get completely distracted from what you
fucks up your skin, huh? You can't do that.
Yeah, it messes up your skin. It's, you know, the chances of you actually like doing any of the thing that you were intending to focus on is very low. Like you said, maybe there's 1 or 2 boulders in there that are relevant for what you should be focusing on. But modern gyms are almost like designed to distract us from the focus of specific intentional training.
And I think like the trend now, I mean, not to be an asshole, but I think like 10 or 20 years ago, the climbers were better at climbing. Now they are worse at climbing, but they are way stronger. And they are so strong on hanging on the fingerboard. And I mean, yeah, that's nice, but you still need to be able to climb to use it.
Right.
So I would say that's like the biggest trend of today, but it doesn't really answer how to get from 5'11" to 5'12" though.
That's okay. I mean, I just have a list of questions, but you know, the questions just serve to lead to interesting comments from you guys, and this is all very interesting and helpful. So this is great. Stian, do you have thoughts either on what Martin said or on the question of themes and what you see keeping people stuck, or where climbers get hung up at different ability levels?
I think if we can say the lower levels, like, it's just like 5'11" to 5'12", it's basically just about climbing. You need to climb more. And then you have a ceiling on how much you can climb if you don't vary stuff. So in order to climb a lot, you need to vary a lot. And probably because of the gyms as well and all the bouldering gyms, then people are doing more boulders. They're doing commercially set boulders, and they think that is transferable to climbing a route outside, but it's not. So in order to break through that, you just need to change around on what you're doing. Like what are you climbing on, and then just climb as much as you can, and that will take you to that next level, basically. And then the higher up the ladder you go, then you sort of like need to break it down to individual preferences, I guess. Some people are really strong, but they might be mentally weak. They might be stressed out. They might be afraid to do stuff on lead, on bolts. And then to acknowledge that, to say that I can't do this route because I'm over gripping like a motherfucker because I'm so scared when I'm 1 meter above the bolts. Then the answer is not to go home and do more dead hangs to be stronger. The answer is maybe to do more lead climbing on easier stuff and to practice taking falls. So, but that is just one direction, and there could be other ones that are really mentally strong and can push hard, but they're not physically strong enough to do whatever they want to do. But like Martin said, then the major trend in climbing is that climbing has gone from only climbing to training for climbing, and people are getting really good at training for climbing, but might not be climbing enough to accomplish their goals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean that's a trend that I hear from just about every coach that I talk to on this podcast, and it makes a lot of sense. But you guys have also done a lot of physical assessing with climbers, and there is, climbing is a physical sport to some degree. If you don't have the finger strength to hold onto the holds, it doesn't matter how good you are at moving on the wall. How important are the different physical characteristics that we need as climbers? Finger strength, upper body pulling, core. I know you guys have done the 9C test. I'll link to the video of you guys doing the 9C test with Magnus, actually, for people that haven't seen it, because it's just entertaining if nothing else. But yeah, how important are each of those different physical components?
Well, they're weighted the same in the test, so maybe they're the same. No, I mean, finger strength is by far the most important. Yeah. And probably then comes, correct me if you think I'm wrong, Stian, but then probably comes pulling, and then probably like core in the end. But yeah, finger strength by far. There are so many climbers who are very, very strong in the fingers, and yeah, their physique is not so good besides that. So it is the most important for sure. But it depends on the style though. I mean, if you want to climb vertical, really crimpy boulders, then finger strength and flexibility takes you a long way. But if you want to go to eco, you will need some upper body and core strength as well.
Yeah, I agree. Like, especially maximum finger strength in relation to body weight is what is like highlighted as the most critical performance factor of all the physical aspects. So it makes a lot of sense to work that specifically. But it's a bit like downhill skiing, I guess. Like, you could be the best on the World Cup circuit on downhill skiing when it comes to squatting, but you might not be the best racer. So and that will also depend on the slope you're at and the surface you're riding on. And so it's the same with climbing as well, that you have these key performance factors from the physical aspect, but they might not help you everywhere. And I find it really fascinating. Like, when you look at some of the best boulderers in the world, outdoor boulderers, physically in their arms and upper body, they're not really that strong. They have insanely strong fingers in relation to their body weight, obviously, but they're not really that strong. I think it was Giuliano Cameroni who like posted a video of him doing his first one arm, and then he had done several 8C boulders. And then you have people in the gym doing 4 one arms, but they can't do a 7C boulder. So it's like, you have to know what tree you're barking up if you want to go somewhere.
Yeah. That's so interesting. I think, Martin, you had a great point there. I've felt for a long time very strongly that, we tend to just lump strength all together in one big bucket. But I think making a delineation between finger strength and then other body strength is huge. Like, I agree. I think finger strength, I meet so many climbers that climb at a high level with varying degrees of body strength. Like, some of them have weak shoulders and weak arms and weak core, and some of them are insanely strong in those areas. But it seems like they all have really strong fingers, and they can kind of adapt their climbing style around other physical limitations or strengths that they have. But that seems like the real common denominator. I don't know any real high performers that actually truly have weak fingers. Some are better at getting the most possible performance out of their finger strength than others. But yeah, that does seem to be like the clear number one.
And I think there's quite a lot of interesting research coming out, and will probably be more and more over the years to come, like on which factors to predict level. So for now, we have a finger strength to weight ratio, which is quite good. So like, you can categorize climbers depending on how strong they are in the fingers in relation to body weight. But then Dave Giles and the guys from Lattice, they're doing their critical force testing to see like for how long you can sustain your force, which seems to be also quite predictive on climbing level. And then you just need to test a lot of climbers. And the more popularity climbing gains, then the more research will be done on it. So it'll be really interesting to see how this plays out in the future.
Mm-hmm. And we will be right back. This episode is brought to you by Frictitious Climbing. Today, I want to tell you about two of my favorite products from Frictitious. First up is the Easy Board. The Easy Board is hands down the most versatile hangboard that I have ever seen. It's portable, meaning you can take it to the crag, hang it from a tree or from a bolt at the sport cliff. But what makes the Easy Board unique is that it comes with a mounting plate that allows it to be used as a traditional hangboard. In just a few seconds, you can mount it above your doorway at home in any of 4 different orientations and use it just like a regular hangboard. It's light, it's compact, and it covers all your bases. The second product I want to talk about is the Hangboard Doorway Mount. The Hangboard Doorway Mount is perfect for climbers who don't have a great spot for a hangboard or who can't drill into their wall. It's a great way to train in your home or apartment, and you can even have Frictitious install one of their hangboards for you, so when it arrives, you can be up and training in minutes. Head over to frictitiousclimbing.com and use code NUGGET at checkout for free shipping on your order. That's frictitiousclimbing.com. There's a link right there in your podcast app if you need to know how to spell it, and use code NUGGET at checkout for free shipping on your order. This episode is also brought to you by Arc'teryx. When Jordan Cannon, a young climber infatuated with climbing history, meets climbing legend Mark Hudon, a Yosemite big wall free climbing pioneer, they form an unlikely partnership around a common goal. Jordan wants to free climb the Freerider on El Cap in a day, and Mark hopes to free the route in as many days as it takes and accomplish his lifelong goal of free climbing El Capitan. Follow their story in Free as Can Be, a short climbing film brought to you by Arc'teryx. I just watched the film earlier today. It's 31 minutes long. It's so well done. I loved it. It's a story of climbing partnership and adventure. And if you love this podcast, and especially if you loved my episode with Jordan Cannon, episode 115, one of my favorite episodes, then I know you'll love the film. So check it out. Head over to YouTube and search for Arc'teryx Free as Can Be, or use the direct link right there in your podcast app to watch the full 31-minute film for free. Once again, you can head over to YouTube and search for Arc'teryx Free as Can Be, or use the direct link right there in your podcast app to watch the full 31-minute film for free. Arc'teryx presents Free as Can Be, and we hope you enjoy the film. And now, back to the show. I'm curious, it's been a while since I've watched it, but in the 9C test video, do you guys break down different relative finger strength levels and how that correlates to climbing ability? Because I know that like everyone listening to this wants to know where they stack up, and they want to know, you know, how to what degree they should be continuing to focus on hangboarding and things like that. But do you guys break that out? Like, is it a clear linear, or is there clear correlation, I guess, between like dead hanging max strength on your fingers and climbing ability?
Yeah, but the thing with the 9C test is that we, like I tried to say earlier, we had also, I mean, finger strength was just one of 4 components. Or I mean, it's included in the hanging in the bar thing as well, though. But it was just 1 out of 4, and it was linear. So, but how much you can do in a pull up, or how long you could hold a front lever or an L sit, gave you just as many points, you know. So the correlation to how hard you could climb route wise was. The fingers should probably have been weighed quite a lot heavier, I guess. At least twice, maybe 3 times as much as core. Mm-hmm. The test was supposed to be easy for people to do. And yeah, that's the reason it is like that.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting.
I mean, it works. Use it as like a test for yourself and do a retest later and see if like training has made you stronger. But the correlation to grade can probably, it might be a bit off. It seems to be quite good though for experienced climbers. It's really bad for especially like beginner to intermediate boys, because they're so strong on pull-ups and some of the tests. So they're supposed to climb really hard, and they climb not so hard, so they get really pissed. But
yeah.
This is the problem. This is the problem with the internet. Basically, you can't really seem to explain things enough, or
right.
So that, I mean, the grade conversion for that test was more entertainment than anything.
Mm-hmm.
It was a test battery for people to do through COVID, and then people of course get hung up on the grades, which was quite fun. It gave quite a lot of fun out of it. We're not very big on social media or very interested. I guess, but it was sort of like so I kind of like missed that it had gained popularity, and then I think it makes room for some good discussions. I mean, if you are, like we discussed with Tom on the latest podcast as well, like if you get a high testing score, but you don't really climb that well, then what should you do? Like you asked about sticking points. So like if you already do body weight plus your body weight almost in dead anchs on 20 mil edges, which a lot of climbers do, but you're not breaking into the next level in your climbing, then probably more maximum dead anchs on 20 mil edges isn't what you should focus on doing.
Right.
And I used this explanation with Tom as well, that you say you take soccer and Premier League soccer, and you measure the running distance and the capacity, and you have all the measurements of what it takes to be a high level midfielder in Premier League soccer, but you haven't really touched the ball. So like you can have all these physical capabilities, but if you can't really pass or dribble a ball, then you won't be playing midfield in Premier League.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so that's the problem with drawing all these conclusions out of purely physical tests, that you have some correlation data for maximum dead hangs or maximum hang and finger strength in relation to body weight. But to say that will predict the grade you can climb with the perfect technique, like we said in the video with Magnus, then that's obviously a very bold statement if you want that to be true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it seems like a useful assessment tool for those who are willing to be really honest with themselves. You know, like it can highlight a very clear weakness, whether that's a physical limitation or what probably happens more likely is, you know, young stoked dudes take this test because they're the ones that are watching it on YouTube and think it's really cool. And then they're stronger, they're underperforming their strength, right? Like they're performing a lot better on this test than they actually do on the rock, which just means that they need to spend less time training in the gym and more time rock climbing probably. So those are like the really obvious conclusions, I guess, that can be drawn from taking a test like this. But then, yeah, of course climbing's so complicated. Like there's so many different things that show up. But yeah, I liked your comment, Martin. I think I had the same feeling, like the finger strength should be weighted really heavily. And I use myself as a case in this. Like I think I am very strong in a lot of ways relative to how hard I climb when it comes to like pulling and core and front levers and deadlifts and things like that. But I perform better than my finger strength whenever I've done like a finger strength test. So those two things are kind of interesting. Like I use my ability to do lock-offs and things like that to get around finger strength limitations a lot of the time. But when I think I did like the lattice rung test a number of times over the years, and my finger strength was always about 10% lower than you would think it would be based on the red points that I'd done, for instance. So it can get kind of confusing if you lump it all together.
But then again, after a climb, though, you stay in your van and climb all year round, and then I guess that's quite normal though for those types of climbers. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think you have a maybe not easier, but then again, it's easier to have those capabilities to begin with, like to have that technique and a mindset, and then you see that you could just improve a lot on your finger strength, and that will probably take you a lot further, especially in outdoor bouldering. Whereas if you have the strength already, I mean, it seems weird though, but it seems like those who already are pretty strong in their fingers, but they lack all these other factors. In some way, they think that they just need to go back and get stronger fingers. And it's like, well, you have insanely strong fingers already. There are so many other things that you should work on. So maybe it's easier when you see that you lack something in your physical capabilities to train those, instead of like pinpointing your weaknesses on the technical or mental aspects of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let's talk about some of the mental stuff, because another reason why we get so hung up on the physical parts of training is because it's so much easier for a coach to look at our, performance assessment and say, like, here's a clear area of weakness that we can work on. And it's just a lot easier to know what to do and to see progress happening because your numbers are going up on the hangboard or whatever it is. But, as you write a lot about in the book, there's so much room for growth for all of us on the mental side, the technical side, the strategic side of our climbing and performance and red pointing and things. But let's talk about the mental side. So I'd love to ask you both, like, what separates climbers with the same physical and technical abilities? Like, have you seen that? Have you seen climbers where they have roughly the same physical abilities and the same technique abilities? What are some of the mental things that can really separate two climbers that are performing at different levels who have the same kind of physical abilities and technical abilities?
No, it's an interesting. I don't think I've ever met two climbers that have the same physical and technical capabilities.
That's fair. That's fair.
but let's make it as an interesting entrance point. I think especially with tension and arousal and nervousness seems to separate quite a lot of climbers. To know when to like fire on all cylinders and when to relax, especially on routes, but also on boulders, seems to be something that some people get better than others. So that could easily separate two climbers with the same technical and physical capabilities. I think that's a skill, and you can have this on a short boulder problem as well. You can have like a very delicate technical intro move or two moves into like a sequence of 4 or 5 moves that are really physical and explosive, and then you might have a top out on top of that. You need to bring your tension level, like mentally, both up and down over just the course of a short boulder problem. And I think that could easily separate performance between two climbers, all things equal.
Yeah, and I think it's like that's on the send of like a specific route or a specific boulder. But it's kind of important to differentiate a bit, I think, whether it's projects, as I suppose, me to have those projects, because I don't have the patience to deal with them. I just get really, it just gets really boring for me in the end, and I'll just tend to fade out of it and try something else. So that's one like mental strength that some people have, is this ability to just try it and try it and try it, and actually think it's fun for a long time. My wife is like that. She's done some routes that are pretty hard, and she can climb on them for 1 year, 2 years. We have friends that have stayed in Spain doing like 9As and 9Bs, I think, down there. Sindre, isn't it 9B, Shilam? And they stayed there for 4 years, climbing on the same route.
Wow.
Basically every day for 4 years. To me, it's impossible. I cannot understand how they can do it. I would get so tired. So that's like one type of mental strength. And then you have the mental strength of being able to push yourself really hard when you're training. So I've been training a few times with Magnus Midtbø, who's the strongest bastard I know physically. I mean, there are so many strong climbers out there, but physically he's such a beast. And I mean, he keeps it pretty simple, or at least he used to do. He just said, don't ever let go. Just tell yourself that you're going to crush this hold every time you go for it, and have good breaks and everything. But every time you try to go for a hold, don't care whether you break your fingers or whatever happens, just hold the hold. And that makes sense, if you're going to train strength, just pull really hard. It makes sense. And there's also like different mindsets I find for trying certain boulders. Stian talked about it a bit earlier, but people can we used to be able to get really angry when we were trying really hard boulders. And if you go to Hyeko, it helps to get, for me, it helps to get really angry. I just have to if I experience some serious pain on the warm-up, it's really good. I get really freaking angry and I can pull super hard. Or if I know that a guy has done this boulder, and maybe that's a bad sort of motivation, but if I know somebody has done it and I expect to be stronger than this motherfucker, I will pull so hard. And that helps me a lot on these boulders. Whereas now I'm getting older and I cannot find this aggression. It's really annoying.
Yeah.
But then it's maybe better to go lead climbing, because then I find if you just go there and climb and have fun and experience the day and shit, then it kind of works on long routes, So yes, there are different ways to find this sort of mental sides of yourself. So mental is it's an interesting chapter for sure.
That's I love what you just said.
In Hyeko, Steven, you've been there a lot, huh?
Yeah, I've spent the last 2 winters in Waco. Yeah, and it's I'm just laughing because I can really relate to what you're saying. When I was younger, when I was 19 and 20, I just wanted it so bad. I would be driving out to the boulders just with gritting my teeth, basically listening to angry music, just pissed off at this first hard move, and I'm gonna pull my ass off the ground today, And I'm definitely happier now that I've let go of that angst. But sometimes I can relate. I'm I wish I could find that again. Where did that fire go? It's still there when I really, really need it, but it's harder to find these days.
You're only 33 now?
What's that?
You're only 33?
33, yeah.
Losing it earlier.
If you find it again, let me know. Tell me what to do.
Don't have kids. I feel like all my testosterone just went out the window with my second kid. There's nothing left. But
is that lack of sleep or what?
Nah, yeah, maybe. Nah, but I do find it a lot harder to tap into aggression on boulders. And aggression can obviously be very effective and also very disturbing, but channeled wisely, then aggression can lead to good stuff, especially on boulders. So I have to dig deeper now, but I think it's also, like you said, when it means something, then you can sort of awaken it. So maybe try to be in situations where stuff matters more often, and then it'll come back in some ways. But yeah, it's hard to quantify all these mental aspects, but then it's something to explore, I think, for each and every climber. And to know that these are elements that we can work on. Sports psychology is huge. It's a big field of research, and it really determines quite a lot on performance. And now, so far, we just talked about outdoors and projecting, but just imagine competitions. Like when you saw climbers in the Olympics last year, they were really nervous because it mattered more. It's you get this one shot, and you've trained for it for a long time. So the situation is way more demanding, and they're all pretty similar in physical and technical capabilities. And then maybe it's the ones that come in with the underdogs stamp that performs better because they have nothing to lose. Whereas you have a lot to lose if you were already one of the best in the world coming into the Olympics and to be a favorite. So to learn how to handle that situation, maybe you need an Olympics because you have to be in that situation to experience what happened and then to learn from it. But yeah, I think competitions are something to look at when it comes to like the mental factors.
Let's talk about the technical side too. And I think maybe an interesting way to tackle this would be to hear for each of you guys, what have been the things that you have focused on that have led to some of the greatest improvements in your own technical abilities? Whether this is like realizing that you had a specific need or weakness, and then I just would be curious to hear how you've gone about addressing that and improving that and turning it into a strength, if that makes sense. Because I don't know, like it's easy to talk about technique and have a book and have a bunch of exercises to do and kind of envision like spending more time doing drills on the wall. But when I think about myself and what has allowed me to become a better technical climber, I don't do that very often, and that really hasn't resonated with me as much. It's more like watching a lot of really high performing climbers climb, like watching their videos and really studying how they move and then trying to emulate that. Like, you know, for example, Jonathan Siegrist, he's someone that I've looked up to forever, and I really admired his climbing style. He's such a technician, and I just tried to climb like that for years and years, and just had a lot of focus on trying to lock things in and just be very precise and very intentional with every single foot placement and how I grabbed every hold and things like that. And then I got to a point where I was like, okay, I actually am probably climbing too statically a lot of the time. I would benefit a lot from being more aggressive and using momentum more. So then I kind of did the same thing, but copying like Jimmy Webb, you know, studying a lot of his climbing videos. And just, I actually learned this from Christophe Bichet. Like I had a conversation with him on the podcast, and he'll pick somebody and then pretend to be them for weeks at a time, even like kind of act like them at the climbing gym when he's not climbing. And I thought that was really interesting. So that's something that I've tried and has actually helped a lot. Like I'm going to try to model Jimmy's just aggressiveness on the side of a boulder. You know, if I'm trying a boulder with more dead points or dynos or dynamic movement or things like that, more power. But yeah, I'd love to hear from you guys. Do you have like a chapter in your climbing where you focused a lot on a specific technique, and what was it that helped you improve at a specific thing?
Yeah, I can go first on it, Stian, because I guess we have the same story, just the opposite way. It's funny that you mentioned the copying thing, because actually one of the exercises in the second book is called Copycat, which is exactly that. Try and mimic the way another climber does a boulder. Do it the exact same way, and preferably a climber that has other strengths and moves in a different way than yourself. So it's actually a really good exercise, and that was meant doing like a single boulder, but this can for sure be done for a period of time on all boulders. But I had the exact same experience, I think, as you, Steven, because I was really, really static. And I think that was linked to, or static in my climbing style. I think that was linked to maybe like I was a bit scared of falling in the beginning, but I always like to be in control of what I'm doing. And now that I've started like freediving, I don't have like super fast progression in it, just because I'm a bit scared of it. And I think it was the same in climbing, that I really like to control what I was doing. But at some point when I was not like crimping on a vertical face, I understood that I had to be more dynamic to be able to do a lot of moves. And I think when I was young, I wasn't like willing to admit that I was mimicking your way of climbing, Stian. I would probably think it was someone else, like at least tell it to myself. But I used many years to try and become more dynamic in my climbing style. And I mean, Stian still laughs at me when I have like a course in dynamic climbing. He's like, "Yeah, that's just a joke." But no, it takes time. At least it took many years, and I'm still not all that good with it. But I was doing it all the time. Like every time when I went climbing, in the warm-up, in the main part of when I was trying boulders, I tried to do them dynamically and get the dead point perfectly. And just do it like every day when you go climbing. I think it's probably the best way, but that's sort of, to be able to do that, you need to know though that it's a weakness that you have. And I think we climb so much that we will know, or we have some friends that will tell us that we really suck at dynamic movements. But maybe like beginners or intermediate climbers, they won't know it all that well. So maybe for them, it could be good to get some advice from a coach or something who can watch them climb and maybe pick some points of focus for them.
Yeah. Obviously, I went in the other direction, trying to improve. I was physically weak when we started climbing, so to climb dynamically was sort of like the only option. So that came in like from the beginning, basically, that way of climbing to create a lot of momentum from the lower body and swing more through moves. And then you come to a point and the walls get steeper and the holes get worse, and you can't really like to climb all dynamically without having the ability to be calmer and position your body better. It's not compatible with climbing harder stuff, because the climbing gets like, you have all these elements in hard climbings where you need to be precise, you need to be static, you need to control movement. So I spent the winter working that, and I failed miserably because I didn't get that much stronger, and I really screwed up my dynamic way of climbing because I sort of like overdid my weakness. So I spent like, when I bouldered, I tried to lock off more and move with less momentum to be able to control the swings better. And I think it could have worked. I just did it too much. And then I sort of like forgot a bit what I was good at. So it's this pendulum again, that you have something that is really good, and then the pendulum swings a bit too far to the other side, and you sort of like forget what you were good at. So I had to go a bit back to my roots and then find other ways to work it. I think this to look to others and not necessarily always mimic them, but at least reflecting on why they climb as they do. Like, why is it better for him or her to move in that way, and what happens when I do the same? And I think that we've been climbing for a quarter of a century now, and we've seen so many climbers. I think you just intuitively think like that, and you want to try to move like the best climbers you see, and you try it out on the wall. Maybe without even thinking too much about it. But I think like deliberate practice is that you do something with intention. So like, you can do the same move 4 times and you can do it with 4 different styles and see what the difference is. But if you're not reflecting on what the difference is, then what use is it? So you need to reflect on it to be able to improve.
Yeah, that's great. That's really great. Thank you guys both for all of that. I have a question in front of me. I wanted to ask you guys both, what have been some of the primary focuses in your own climbing that have led to improvements or breakthroughs? And of course, we've already been talking about that a little bit, but Stian, I want to go back to a comment that you had earlier about the commercial climbing gym and how people climb a lot of the commercial set boulders, and then that doesn't translate to rock climbing the way that they expect it to. And you and I had a conversation a few weeks ago about you climbing your first 9A, and you talked about having a family and having kids and how that has changed your focus. And really, I think you said that you just haven't climbed in a commercial gym in a really long time. Am I remembering that correctly?
Yeah, I think I said something like, I don't do anything that doesn't directly transfer into what I'm trying to do. So I train in a commercial gym, but we have a really good spray wall setup with like 30, 45, 60 degrees walls, which are really good set. I had maybe 3 weeks in December 2021 that I did just commercial set boulders for fun. Besides that, I haven't done commercial set boulders for like 3 years, I think.
Wow.
Because it it's really fun. It's like you said, we default maybe to it when we go to the gym, but it doesn't really, it won't help me achieve the goals that I've set out to do. I've climbed for so long, and I don't really need to improve my competition style bouldering, even though it's fun. If I want to succeed on the things that I'm trying to do, then I know what to do on a spray wall. So, but then again, I have been climbing for a long time. It was several years of our lives where we didn't do anything else. So I have like the volume and the pyramids and everything set up. So like after 25 years, I think I'm allowed.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I want to ask you this. So do you think that just climbing a lot in a commercial gym on commercial boulders, is that helpful and relevant for newer and kind of intermediate climbers? Let's say up to like, I don't know, V8, V9, V10, something like that. Like at what point does that start to become a trap that's keeping people from improving at the things that will translate to rock climbing, in your opinion?
We can turn it around, and then we can see like some of the routes and boulders that were done many years before commercial setting was really popular.
Oh, I like
before
this.
Climbing was really popular. And you could also see on the top outdoor climbers today how many of them do a lot of like commercial set boulder problems. So I think like in the earlier days before the climbing gyms, or at least the big commercial climbing gyms, then I think quite like Jerry Moffat and Ben Moon and a lot of other climbers, they understood what they needed to do, right? To pull hard on smaller holds, on steeper walls, basically. And I think today as well, you see those focusing a lot on performing outdoors. They tend to train in ways that are better suited to succeed. And I don't think commercial set boulders necessarily are that specific to accomplishing outdoor goals. But I think they have so much in them to understand climbing movements and to vary and to expose your strength and weaknesses. And you can learn a lot from it if your goal is something else than to just tick off another boulder. Maybe you can try to think, how did I do the boulder? Could I maybe do it again? How many times do you do a boulder again after you've done it? Not that often, I would think. So I think there's lots of value in it, and I think you can improve a lot as a climber by doing commercial boulders, but I'm not sure that kind of setting really transferred to outdoor hard climbs.
Mm-hmm. For you specifically, spending those 3 years mostly climbing on a spray wall, what were you focused on in your own climbing? What were you focused on improving?
Strength and power.
Okay.
I'm getting old. So that's what I'm losing. Like it's the strength and power, and that just like the things that I want to do are the main limiting factor for me is that I'm not strong enough to do the moves. And then when I am strong enough to do the moves, I can start figuring out if I like endurance. But then that endurance training, if I try to combine that into a busy week, it would usually just distort my strength and power training. So it's been that focus, strength and power.
Martin, do you have any additional thoughts on the commercial climbing, commercial sets, as a route setter and a high level climber yourself?
Yeah. No, I think that the commercial setting, as Stian says, I mean, it can teach you a lot. But if you want to pull really hard on small holds outdoors, you need to train on small holds indoors. And we tend to avoid that in the commercial gyms just because it feels kind of nasty for a lot of the customers and they don't really want it. But it depends where you would climb outdoors though, because if you're going to climb on sandstone, if you're going to either Font or some of the places that you have in the south of the States. I haven't been there though, but it seems like there's a bunch of big slopers. I think that style is maybe more suited or then it's better to train on the commercial setting because there is a lot of volumes and a lot of slopers and big holds. So it might make more sense. And I think also as like I tend to train mainly on the spray wall, and most of my stronger friends do. But the fingers get tired though quite fast from training on these walls. So do the warm up on the bigger holds and boulders that are set in the gym. And also have some days. I mean, Stian is on a very tight time schedule. But if you have more time and you have a week off and you're going to do more training than a normal week, then include some easier days where you do these boulders and you focus on the technique. I mean, where I live, it basically rains all the time. So I can't climb all that much outdoors. So I have to train quite a lot indoors. There's a long winter and shitty weather in the summer. So yeah, for me, it's maybe I have like 3 days on the spray wall during a week and maybe 2 on the session bouldering. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that, like Martin said, that if you have more time, and we can come back to that, Stephen, but that it makes the priorities easier when you don't have that much time. You need to focus on some things. But when you have more time to climb, to see that intensity in climbing isn't just the physical intensity. Like if the walls get steeper and the holes get smaller, then the physical intensity increases. So it's harder for your arms and fingers. But then you can have technical intensity. So you could do slab boulders. That doesn't really interfere with anything that you've done besides maybe getting mentally fatigued by pushing your session too long. But to see that you can challenge yourself technically and physically in the same session is not ideal. But if you want to lump things together, then you could do that. And then if the holds are so bad you can't really pull on them, then you have to move in a different way. So I think for people to polarize those things a bit in the same way as people are saying that we should polarize the physical training from strength and power and endurance and keep them quite separate. It's the same with this technical and strength aspect, that you could like be really focusing on boulders that doesn't really give you the opportunity to pull that hard, but could be really hard to do. Mm-hmm. And then you'll start maybe to see improvements in both aspects.
Yeah, that's great. That's really interesting. Yeah, and for someone that has more days, you can't strength train 5 days a week, or most of us can't. If we are, then we're not actually trying as hard as we could. So adding in those technique-oriented slab days, they're really fun for one. Yeah, very humbling often.
Yeah, it's very humbling
but helpful.
And it's problem solving. And I've had a hard time having younger athletes like do them as well, because it's quite like, yeah, but if I'm not tired after a session, then I haven't really trained. But it's like you could spend 2 hours on a couple of boulders, like technically really difficult. And if you don't do either of them, you probably learn something. At least you've been really frustrated for a long period of time, and then you learn something from that. So I think there is a lot to take away from the commercial setting as well. You just need to be a bit specific on what you're trying to work on. And usually we just pull towards the things that we could probably do in a session or in a few goes. And then you give it a few goes. You might do it, you might not. And you move on to the next one. And you get your favorite wall angles and your favorite hold types. And we're just humans. So we go back to whatever we're good at. And there's the mental aspect, like this metacognition part of it, to see yourself from the outside and like, I basically do the same on every session. Mm-hmm. This is not going to take me anywhere.
Right. Yeah, that is such a common trap. That is the mistake that I made for years, especially early on in my climbing. Just do the same lineup of stuff every time I went to the wall, and probably way too much, like try to fit everything in one session and just wreck myself, and then take a rest day and then try to do it again. And I was always, I remember at the time I was always frustrated because I had friends of mine that climbed way less than I did and trained way less than I did. I didn't know much about training at the time, but I'd finish my sessions and go upstairs and like do a core workout that just sucked, and suffer through it and do pull-ups and stuff. But they would show up for like an hour and just try really hard boulders and do that every other day. And they were getting better results from me. And I just felt I remember I just felt frustrated and really unlucky. Like, oh, it's, they don't have to work as hard as I do or whatever. But in hindsight, I'm like, oh, I was actually just spending a lot of energy and time doing things that weren't that helpful. And I was just kind of cluttering my climbing life with just a lot of junk, just like the stuff where you're not really trying hard enough to cause physical adaptation. You're not getting pumped enough to really build fitness. You're just kind of doing a lot of climbing until you get tired and then repeating.
Mm.
Yeah.
Probably the solution is to get a couple of kids so you don't have time off.
Yeah.
Shit.
I think also that we need to separate the indoors and outdoors because a lot of the things that we do indoors, even though it's on a spray wall, aren't always very transferable to the outdoor climbing. Like it depends a bit on where you want to go. But outdoor climbing is outdoor climbing, and it's something different. You hold on to worse, either more slopey slopers or more crimpy crimps, and you stand on things that you wouldn't even consider standing on indoors.
That's true. Yeah.
And this is a skill. And so the holes get smaller, they get worse, the position gets harder and more complex, the footholds are worse. So you need to climb a lot outdoors if you want to succeed outdoors. And I think that being constrained on time, then you can do, like in my experience, that I've made major improvements in hangboards because that was what I had most time to do. But it's not automatically transferring into good results on rock because it takes a bit of time to adapt to the style again and all these things. Mm-hmm. So just to get out and climb more on rocks is going to help you improve on rock climbing, obviously.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's worth hammering home for sure. I'm gonna ask another question from Rannveig. She asked, what are the biggest gimmicks in climbing and training right now? And what old school methods are the most legit?
You want to go, Martin?
Yeah. Yeah, like the biggest gimmicks in training now. I'll start with the old school. I'm old. No, but I think like back in the day, I think a lot of people had it quite right. They were, at least though for outdoor climbing, on hard outdoor climbing though, they were pulling really hard on small holds. Like if you watch the old films, Real Thing, the old pro tips with Malcolm Smith and everything, I mean, what they did was quite right. We spoke with Jerry when we were over there now, and like he said, I mean, I wish I hadn't trained, like you said, Steven, like that hard for every session, because it makes you injured, and it doesn't optimize like the outcome of your training. You won't get that much stronger, at least not as fast as you could if you don't rest enough. Gimmicks, did you have time to think about that, Stian?
Yeah. I mean, we're Norwegians. We can just say that we don't really understand what gimmicks are, and then if the answer is offensive in some way, we can just say, "Oh, sorry, it was wrong answer for wrong question." I think there is an obvious gimmick into measuring stuff, which has been a part of sports science in other sports for a long time, and it was about time that it came to climbing, with all the possibilities of measuring everything, like from just peak force to rate of force development to what time period in the rate of force development curve you should be measuring, to measuring the oxidative level in your forearm muscles as you do stuff. So there are a lot of instruments coming into climbing in a sports science way, which are really cool. And in a few years, we'll probably know more on how to use them. I think the pitfall is that people tend to get more focused on if they should hang something for 7 seconds or 12 seconds, or if they should do 10-minute blocks of finger training every day, or if they should do maximum hangboard training 2 times a week. If they have good or bad contact strength compared to their maximum finger strength. Like, you get trapped in all these measurements, basically. So in all its with all the possibilities that comes, I think in its birth, where I would place it now, then people tend to get a bit trapped into the details, maybe, instead of like the things we discussed. If you want to improve on climbing harder outdoors, then go outdoor and try to climb harder, instead of like thinking that you have to change your fingerboard protocol instead.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. And it is interesting. Like I'm obviously very interested in a lot of the instruments and measurements that are happening in climbing because I'm an engineer and that's kind of how I'm wired. But you're absolutely right. Like I've had so many conversations on this podcast with really high performing climbers, and those little very specific things weren't the secret for any of them. Like when it comes down to it, most of them have not an easy approach, but a relatively simple approach. Like they just
simpler approach. Simple.
They just try really hard on really short, hard spray board problems, very often, or whatever it is. Like it's not complicated. It's not these really nuanced protocols at percentages of their max and things like that. I don't think I can think of a single person who I've talked to on the podcast where they went really geeky into that stuff, and that's what made the difference in leveling up to to their current ability level or sending their project or whatever.
I agree, and just to get that right, then I'm a really big proponent on bringing the sports science stuff into climbing and to measure stuff and to get more data and to find out on what variables are actually worth measuring. And I've done a lot of measuring myself, both with clients and climbers and athletes, and they give a lot and as a test result and something to measure against, and to have baseline values on climbers so you can have something to measure against when they get injured, for instance. Like, there are so many possibilities, but it is still in its infancy, and it's just brought out throughout the web as something that everyone should do or can do at least. And some people tend to just get trapped a bit in the details. And I think there are so many other things to focus on in climbing to improve.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, let's talk more about some of those other things. I actually, I read the mental chapter and the tactics chapter and just have a few notes about both of those. And this is a question for you, Martin. I have a quote in front of me that just says, "Never respect grades." And there's a photo of you climbing the Buttermilker in Bishop, the classic V12 there. Can you tell me what you meant by that, or why that quote feels important to you?
I think I said that when I was really young, actually, because when we started climbing, people had a lot of respect for grades, and maybe they still do, but I remember it especially from that time. You weren't like maybe allowed to think that you were going to try this route or that grade before you had done that route or that grade. You had to do like the whole ladder, and maybe you're still good to do like a bunch of 8As before you do an 8B, but still, if you really want to try that 8B, just go and try it, and don't be afraid to do it. It's just gonna hold you back. So it's something. It's from my youth, really. But it's a good quote, I think. Don't be scared to try.
Yeah, that's great.
And I think to contextualize it a bit, it was like you did it was a route called Marathon, which is the first 8B route, like 13D in Norway, which was done like in 1988 or something. And you did this route when you were young. I don't know if you were 15 or 16, but at that time that was quite exceptional, especially from a Norwegian, to do that route at that age with that amount of climbing experience. And I think we need people that don't respect grades, that just go for it and try to just break through and show that it's possible. And it's like what we call the Bannister effect. So like Roger Bannister was the first person to run an English mile. I think it was under 3 minutes, and then when he finally did it, then a lot of other people came and did it as well. But I think you have all these unbeatable records that people tend to respect, and then someone comes along and doesn't give a shit. Just go on and do it, and then everyone else comes and does it afterwards.
Yeah, that's great. It makes me think of climbing at Smith Rock. Like, I lived there for so long, and would always have projects in the aggro gully where like it's probably the highest concentration of hard routes at Smith in this single gully. And me and my friends and a lot of the locals that climb there every weekend, like, we all had the same attitude about these 514s. You know, they're like 14A, but we're just like, oh, you know, that climb, just really putting them up on a pedestal and being really intimidated. And like, you know, there's some of them that I still have never even tried because I just had them in a certain category in my brain, you know, like, I'm not worthy of getting on that thing yet. And then I remember Drew Ruana, he was climbing at Smith a lot, and he started coming down. He was like I was older, and he was like an 18-year-old kid, and he had all these friends from high school and college or whatever that would come down on their spring breaks. And they didn't give a shit about any of the grades. Like, they didn't even know what some of these routes were. They're just like, that looks cool, let's get on it. And it's a 514, and you know, they do it in a few days and then just like move on to the next one. And it had a huge impact on me, actually, just to see how, yeah, they had no like irreverence for the climbs. They didn't care. They just like got on stuff that looked cool, and they had no self-limiting beliefs based on what they had and hadn't climbed yet, you know, how big their pyramid was, like what other routes they'd done, whatever. They just, that looks cool, I'm strong, I'll get on it. Check it out.
You won't be like V13 strong by doing a bunch of V10s, you know. You have to get 13.
Yeah.
That easy.
Yeah, that's great. From the mental chapter as well, can you guys tell me about the play box versus the think box?
That was something. That was something that I got introduced to when I did my coaching education, and a lot of the sports psychology science is done on golfers because it's quite easy to measure, and they operate with a think box and play box often as a mental strategy, so that you have an imaginary line. So when you step outside of that box, you're in your thinking box. You can do all the reasoning and all the self-talk and all the judgments on how to make, for a golfer to make that swing, or for a climber maybe how to execute that move. But then when you step over that line and you come into the play box, then you leave everything else, because what you don't want your thoughts interfering with your movements. Basically, you want everything to go as automatic as possible. And then if you're starting to think too much about where your foot placement is, or if your hand is in the right place, and just basically every adjustment you're trying to make will usually just mess up the execution. So it's more as a tool to see what state of mind you're in. So like when you leave, you actually go for it. So I think it could use that both in training and on projecting as well.
Yeah, that's cool. So you would have like an actual imaginary line in front of you at the boulder, and you would step behind that and think about the movements, think about beta, think about what you want to do differently on the next try. And then once you step over that line, you're just trying to be present and in the flow and kind of trust your body to do it. Am I getting that right? Yeah,
that's the hope that will happen.
Yeah.
But it doesn't always do. But it's a tool to help you create that distance between your thoughts and your actions.
Okay. Then I have a question about the tactics chapter. I wanted to ask you, Stian, about Eurofighter. Why did it feel important to include that story in the book? I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, basically just to brag. That was the thing.
Tell me about Eurofighter. What is it? And
No, Eurofighter is one of the hardest boulders that I've done, and it was the first ascent. It was proposed as V13, and it hasn't seen many repetitions. I think it's only Martin and Tilo that has repeated it, so I think it's somewhere in between V13 and V14. I tried it when it was found. I tried it for some time, and I couldn't do it. I was too weak, basically. This is like a 60-degree steep wall on in-cut crimps. So it has some elements in it that suits me really well. It has a very precise dead point, and it has some elements that doesn't suit me at all, like a very physical top arch. So I tried it for some time, and I couldn't do it. And then I started working it again several years after. I tried it a bit with other folks as well, and suddenly I could stick the first move, which was the crux, this dead point move, and I fell at the end, 3 or 4 times in a session, and I thought it would just be a matter of time, basically. And I went out with Martin, actually, and another friend called Kenneth on the day that I sent, and I couldn't do the first move anymore because my mind was just set on doing the top part. So like you said, with this think box, play box to be present, then I was everything but present when I sat down to do the start, because my mind was just, I wanted to be finished. So I wanted to like not let go when I came to the end. And as a product of that, I just couldn't do the start. And then it's one of those rare days where you can actually change something within a session. So I was able to recognize where I was mentally and then just readjust and say that, all right, fuck it. If it doesn't go this session, it'll go the next one or the next one. So I'll just change the goal for today to do the first move or to do the crux move as many times as possible this session, and then see how it goes. And then Mexico it went.
That's awesome.
So that was why it was important.
I'll add something. That was a really cool day. That dead point move is so hard. It's so hard. Stian, except that day he did it so easy. But yeah, it's horrible. The top is not so hard though. That's another story. But I was thinking about the think box, play box thing, because maybe it's just for me, but it's on those kind of moves, like those precise dead point, like really technical moves, that if you start thinking and you start to try and analyze what you're doing, or if you are somewhere else, you're thinking about success or something that Stian was talking about now, it's so impossible. I mean, it's so hard to do those moves then. If I try to teach someone some dynamic movement and I try to tell them something like, hey, you do like this or you do like that, keep your hips like this, go out from the wall and into the wall, they start thinking. And then there's no way they're able to do it the correct way afterwards. So I think in these types of situations or moves, this whole playbox thing is so important, because you just need to let it all go and just climb on those moves. It's just physical, like the top on Eurofighter. It doesn't matter all that much. Of course, you shouldn't think about the top and wanting to be done with the whole thing. But for me, it's not that important if I'm like totally just in the play zone. But on those dynamic moves, it's so important, I think.
Do you have like a practical tip or anything? Like what helps you get into that place of just letting yourself climb? Like, what do you do? Do you focus on your breathing? Is there anything that helps you make that mental shift if you find yourself thinking too much about the move?
No, yeah. Yeah, I cannot be very angry, at least, on those moves. No, I don't actually have a really good answer for that. Do you, Stian?
Yeah, I tried to give myself one challenge or one thing to focus on. and that could vary. That could be how to place the left hand on the hold that you're starting from, for instance, or it could be in a sequence of moves. It could be to do that move in that way, so you have like one single thing to focus on, and then hopefully the rest will come, like sort of go with the flow. I had one really great experience. I did a first ascent of an 8C maybe 11 years ago, and I fell, like I did a move, and then I fell on the next move, and I didn't really think that I was able to do it that day. But like the next go, the only goal that I had was to hit that move where I fell. I wanted to get that with a higher body position. That was the only thing that I was focusing on. And then obviously you've done the crux on a route so many times before, so when you just come into the flow, then it's fine. And I can't really remember anything after hitting that move with a higher body position.
Mm.
And I think to externalize it a bit, to like focus on maybe how a hold feels, or how a foot feels, or how a body position feels, could help you to sort of like a mindful detachment from what you're actually doing.
Yeah, as long as it's not super like important for the move, because if I start thinking about those things, it could also make it harder for me, I think. I cannot think about anything when I'm trying to do those moves. If I do, then it just gets harder for me. But yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of fun. I think it's interesting.
I really have to go pretty soon.
Okay, yeah, I've taken a lot of you guys' time. You have a halibut to catch.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can wrap things up. Well, the kids are going to sleep anyway.
Well, thanks so much, Martin. It was really good to get to know you a bit, and to yeah, this has been awesome. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, it's been super nice. I hope to see you in Flagstaff or somewhere else.
Awesome. Yeah, I don't think I'll be here in October, but you never know. So yeah, be sure to reach out when you come this way. Maybe we can cross paths.
Will do.
All right.
Okay.
Good luck fishing.
Thanks.
Awesome. Well, I don't want to take too much more of your time, Stian. Let's wrap up by talking a little bit more about the book. And there's so much, I guess my question is, there's so much information now on the internet. There's so much information just in, this podcast and people that have listened to all these conversations. What do you think people can get out of purchasing the Climbing Bible and having all this stuff in one place? Like what makes this resource different, and what do you think people can get out of it?
The ambitious goal was to gather a lot of the information and put it in a book, in a physical book. And I don't know, maybe people nowadays like to search more and cherry pick whatever they like to invest more time in learning. But I think what we try to accomplish is to give a thorough introduction to the physical, technical, tactical, mental performance factors in climbing, and how to train them. And hopefully it's comprehensive enough that people don't really need to go everywhere else to supplement it. But obviously there are a lot of places you can go to learn more. So, but I haven't really found any other books that integrates all of these performance factors and bring them together. So I think that's hopefully what we can contribute to. That was the goal, at least.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. I think you guys did an amazing job. I mean, as far as having one book, one resource that really touches on all of the different performance factors in climbing that I do think is relevant for everybody. I mean, I've been climbing for a long time, and I definitely have already taken some things away from reading it. I think you guys did an amazing job. And I haven't even really taken much of a dive into the exercises yet. So that's what I hope to do this summer. I have kind of a training block with more time inside, and even just more time. I'm sure I can do some of the exercises on rock as well. But yeah, I'm excited to dig into that and start playing with some of those exercises from the second book.
I'm glad to hear.
Yeah.
And I think, the first book is that could be sort of like in Norway we made it as a hardcover coffee table book, and it's like even though it's a training for a climbing book, we also wanted it to be an inspiration when it came to the places you want to climb on, and to show to an increasing amount of climbers, mainly climbing indoors, like all the magic wonders that are in the outdoor climbing world. So that was also a goal with that book. And then the second book, you asked when we talked earlier that why didn't we just make a video library and put it online? I think we kind of fell in love with the idea of having like a short, dusted book stashed away in your backpack, and then sort of have the thought of flipping it up when you go to the gym and see that, all right, I'll try this, and then instead of looking at someone else doing it, then try it yourself and reflect on it and see what can I draw from this? Like, why did this feel different than this?
That's awesome. I love it. So one book belongs on the coffee table. The other book belongs covered in chalk and dirt in your climbing bag. You can pull it out every time you go to the gym. Well, this has been great, man. Anything that we didn't talk about in this conversation that you feel is important to share before I let you go?
That's like a purely egocentric thing, but I'm quite. I like the way we made the injury part of our book in the Climbing Bible, because it's not like a guide through injuries and how to treat them. You have different books and different resources for that. But I hope that we've presented that in a way that gives people more confidence to move. I think that healthcare is in sort of like an identity crisis, where we tend to make people very fear avoidant to movement. I think that we're educated in finding flaws and finding all these small things, and we're not really even sure how much all of these small things really matter. And I think that we have a responsibility as healthcare providers to be more movement optimists, to use the words of a Canadian chiropractor called Greg Lehman. That we should be movement optimists. And in order to do that, to start to understand what pain really is, that it's not a measurement of tissue damage, but it's something else. It can be related to tissue damage, but it doesn't necessarily have to. So hopefully what we put in that chapter in the book could lead some people to a better rehabilitation and a more happy climbing life.
That's great. Yeah, that sounds like it's right up your alley, specifically with the work that you do. So, Well, awesome, man. Thanks for all your time today. This has been really fun for me. What's the best way for people to get their hands on this book? What gets the most money in your guys' pocket? Most of my listeners are in North America or in the States, Canada as well, but also Europe, all over the place. Yeah.
The best option would then be to buy the Norwegian book, because we own all the rights. Okay. And then learn Norwegian. Besides that, you could go to Amazon or to Vertebrate Publishing. That's our publishing house in Britain. So it's the same ones that have Mastermind from Jerry Moffat and Beast Making from Ned. Okay. And a lot of other great books. So it's the same publishing house. So you could look them up both on the internet and on their social media, Vertebrate Publishing. And yeah, Amazon sells the books. And money-wise, I don't know. I hope people like the book. I do other things for a living as well. So if we can give something back to a community and a sport that has sort of given us this much for so long, then that would be enough.
That's awesome. Well, I will be sure to link to both of you guys on Instagram, and even though I know you say you don't do much there, and I'll be sure to link to all the places where people can buy the book. I'll separate it out for different countries and things like that, Amazon links, and to your publisher as well. I'll put all that in the show notes at thenuggetclimbing.com. As always, thank you guys for listening, and thanks again, Stian.
Thanks a lot, Steven. It's been great. Looking forward to meeting you in real life at some point.
Me too. Can't wait. I hope our paths cross soon.
All right. Great. Have a great day.
Okay, you too.
It's been great.
Talk soon.
Talk soon.
Bye.
Cheers.
Hey friends, I hope you enjoyed that episode with Stian and Martin. I put links to their book, The Climbing Bible, in the show notes for this episode at thenuggetclimbing.com, and you can find links for it right there in your podcast app if you want to check it out. Before you go, don't forget to check out Frictitious Climbing. Head over to frictitiousclimbing.com to shop for hangboards and accessories and use code NUGGET at checkout for free shipping. The Easy Board might literally be the cleverest hangboard design that I have ever seen, and the hangboard doorway mount is a convenient way to train in your home or apartment. So check them out. Also, be sure to check out the Arc'teryx film Free as Can Be. I watched it earlier today. I absolutely loved the film, and if you love climbing, I'm sure you'll dig it. Head over to YouTube and search for Arc'teryx Free as Can Be, or use the direct link right there in your podcast app to watch the full 31-minute film for free. And don't forget to check out Chalk Cartel. If you need to refill your chalk bag, head over to chalkcartel.com to re-up on my personal favorite high-performance climbing chalk. Use code NUGGET at checkout for 20% off your order. And check out the half kilo, their new size option that comes in a fully compostable bag. Be sure to check out Rhino Skin Solutions. Whether you have dry, glassy skin or sweaty skin and have trouble keeping chalk on your hands, Rhino Skin Solutions has products that are designed just for you and your skin type. Check them out at rhinoskinsolutions.com and use code NUGGET at checkout for 20% off your order. And finally, don't forget to check out Grasshopper Climbing. The Grasshopper board truly is my favorite of all of the boards, and it's the board that I plan to purchase for my own house someday once I'm ready to take a break from van life. It's awesome. It's so much fun to climb on. It'll get you strong. So if you're thinking about buying a board, head over to grasshopperclimbing.com to check this thing out. And that is it, my friends. Thank you so much for listening to the very, very end. I appreciate you so much, and we will see you next time.
Like we do it.